let me first summarize the gender pay gap in your countries as I found it. Please correct me if I am wrong. So I'll start with Canada. Canada, 16.6%. Ireland, 8.6%. And Romania, 3.8%. So logically, the first question goes to Romania. How comes? And how comes? And what did you do?
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Very glad to be here. Congrats to the organizers. It's really a highly relevant topic that you chose. And I'm glad to be here to share Romania's experience. Indeed, we have one of the lowest wage disparity in the European Union. We are proud to have such a good percentage. I think there was work in progress during all those years after the change of regime in Romania. And what helped a lot was our EU membership because it was a process of adjusting to new regulations and implementing new policies. And it's actually a very good model for others. What we did was to engage in all fields to recruit a new generation. We needed to have new people in many fields, including in diplomacy. So this is how new opportunities were present equally for both women and men. And Romanian women, I think they are also very strong and determined. So I will share later a bit more on women in diplomacy and generally about situation on labor market in Romania. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. And the same question goes to you as well. So what measures have your governments implemented to address the gender pay gap, and how effective these measures have been?
Sure, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here today. So yeah, our numbers are okay, not great. But I would say that we are committed to gender equality and the inclusion of women's voices. And it's really fundamental in Canada. One of our values is that we believe all people, regardless of background, gender, any intersecting identity, that they all have the right to benefit from equal participation in the economic and political life. So, why? Well, women get the job done. We all know that. But, removing systemic barriers isn't easy. When I was looking into the data, one thing that I found interesting, and I think you have to remember that Canada is a very multicultural, multi-ethnic country. We do have a very, very large immigrant population. And women experience the gender pay gap differently in Canada. So someone like myself, a Canadian-born woman, I would be at the lowest end of the gender pay gap based on the stats. It's around 9-ish%. Whereas an immigrant woman who arrived in Canada as an adult would be at the highest end, which was in the 20-something. So there's also an experiential piece to it. What are we doing? Well, we're doing quite a few things. One thing I could mention is just on pay transparency, and I believe the speaker just before us was speaking about this a little bit. I work in the federal public service. My salary is online. You can look it up if you know what my classification is. And that really allows, I think, when you're in a workplace, to people who can sort of achieve similar things and know that they're at at a similar wage. I think if you look at the numbers in Canada in the private sector, it's not as advanced on pay transparency. And I think in terms of someone going in to negotiate a wage, just knowing what your colleagues are earning or your peers are earning it gives you more negotiating power, and I think that really helps to to break down some of the wage gaps. Why does it matter? Well, equal pay for work of equal value is applied, your economy grows. So
Very easy. Yes.
Thanks very much, and good morning to everybody. And maybe just before getting into the substance, I'm really honoured and delighted to be here. I think when we're talking about gender equality, I think the role of men and boys is hugely important, and I think if we're ever going to wrestle this issue to the ground, which I hope we do sooner rather than later, we're going to have to be very proactive and engaging men and boys in our efforts, and also to convey the point that this is not, gender equality isn't a zero-sum game, that progressing and seeing women progress in the workplace and in every other facet of society, that it doesn't come at the expense of men and boys' roles in society. In terms of gender pay gap, as you mentioned, I think the current Eurostat figures we're 8.6%. Happily, that's come down significantly from 14+% about 5-7 years ago. So we're headed in the right direction in Ireland, but we have still a long way to go. And I think Antonetta's statistics inspire us. I think for us in Ireland, not just over the recent decades, when I think we've begun to make some progress around gender equality from, admittedly, I think a low base, but even going back to our entry into the European Union more than 50 years ago, one of my favorite examples is what we call the marriage bar. So in 1973, if you were an Irish woman and you worked in the Irish public service and you decided to get married, well, you left the Irish public service, and that was a requirement. Now, we joined the European Union on the 1st of January 73, and the European Commission very quickly took a case against Ireland that the so-called marriage bar was repugnant to the EU treaties, and indeed it was. And so it forced us to change our laws and to bring them into what was then the 20th century. And more recently, we've I think, been inspired and encouraged by EU initiatives, whether it's directives on transparency, which have obviously seen us publishing data about the pay gap, also directives around representation on boards, on corporate boards. Again, before that directive on corporate boards, we were laggards in Ireland in terms of representation. After, now we're ahead of the EU average. So certainly our experience has been the EU has been a real motivator, incentivizer, and also sometimes, and reaching back to a little while back to the 70s, an enforcer as well. So when we were wayward, as it were, I suppose just around, I would like to mention around some initiatives we've taken specifically around women's entrepreneurship. We've been quite specific, and I would say specific on taking measures to encourage women's entrepreneurship. Our state agency, Enterprise Ireland, which encourages Irish companies to grow and to internationalise. In 2011, when it started investing in startups, just 7% of them were women-headed. And in 2022, that figure, by 2023, that figure had increased to 29%. So again, progress, but is it where it should be? Of course it's not. So there's certainly steps we can do. And Enterprise Ireland have been very, I think, quite forward in taking very specific roles and programs, such as a particular program, Going for Growth, which zeroes in on cohorts of women who are leaders in business who are interested in growing their business, internationalizing their business, and supporting those women to grow and internationalize.
Amazing.
Thank you. While you were speaking about increasing the opportunities for the woman entrepreneur, which is a necessity to close the pay gap, I know that Antoinetta, you were speaking, and we were speaking last year together about women in diplomacy, which is something very important in Romania. Can you tell us more?
Thank you for this question, because I'm proud to share with you that actually diplomacy is a field where we have a very good situation of women representation in Romania. We have more than 50% of women in our foreign ministry, actually. Almost 50% of women in management positions, and 39, yes, 40 almost women heads of mission. So it's a very good situation. We had until recently our first minister, career diplomat, a woman. I think it's important to also lead by example and to be role models for other fields of activity, because of course, and I would like to follow up on what Emily said, it's not a uniform situation in all fields. We need to be very frank about it. There is still a lot to do, and it depends a lot on the fields of activity. So this is really a very good example. It's not the case, we don't have these high percentages also for women in politics. It's much lower, but also in other fields of activity. And we need to, I think there is a need to be aware that there is a lot to do. We have all legislation, institutional mechanisms and strategies in place, but implementation is key, of course, as in all other fields of activity. And we still need to tackle a lot of disparities, disadvantaged communities, informal work and unpaid work. You know very well that women, I read an article, a recent article in Romania, still women have like 3 to 6 hours per day unpaid work, and you know what I'm talking about. So there are many aspects of women's work that are not really reflected in all these statistics. I would like to make one more point about women in diplomacy, because I am proud with my colleague Emily and fellow colleagues in the room and others that are not here, to be part of a group of women ambassadors, a Prague-based group of women ambassadors. We are around 1/3 of total number of ambassadors, so there is room also of improvement in this international framework. But it's a very important group, a very diverse group, and we try to, as I said, also lead by example and engage with many strands of Czech society, not only with our diplomatic community. And it's an important part of our work here, I would say, as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I liked your points, both of you, about the positive influence of the European Union towards what is happening. Do not make jokes that Canada will join European Union, but more than welcome.
Why not?
But I wanted to ask, sorry about this comment, but I wanted to ask about the international cooperation and how can international cooperation help in addressing the gender pay gap more effectively. You as ambassadors, as I said at the beginning, are building bridges, so how can this help?
Well, as a non-member of the EU, look, we do a lot in our day-to-day work to communicate with others and to share ideas and best practices. Recently, I had a small gathering at the embassy with members of the Czech government, and we were talking about our early child care policy in Canada. So this is a big gap. And it is something that contributes to how, well, first of all, care work is very gendered. We know this. Women, you know, even if both parents, and Canada has excellent parental leave for men as well as women, because fathers are parents too. But I think still social norm is that you go back, you know, the woman sort of has to organize the childcare when you want to go back to work, and then it becomes a question of affordability and accessibility. So we had a discussion to talk about what we've done to implement some new policies around the 0 to 5-year-old childcare to make it more affordable and more accessible, so that women who do want to go back to work, or men, parents who want to go back to work, have access. So this was a very large program. It's still in play, but the goal was to bring down the cost of daily childcare to around $10 a day per child, which is from, you know, in some places $100 a day. So this is a big lowering, and also to increase the number of childcare spaces available. And we've done really well. So far, I think we've created, and I have some stats, but they're not right in front of me, but we've created, we've seen a 16.6% increase in the number of spaces, and net costs have dropped from 40% of a second earner's income to 13%. So this is really lowering one of those systemic barriers that's keeping people from being able to go back to work and still afford childcare, because there's an economics here, right? If it's too expensive, then your paycheck, why would you go back to work? And it was a really interesting seminar, because, you know, one of our roles is to be able to share some of the things we're doing in our countries, and then exchange on what is happening here in the Czech Republic, and what some of our lessons learned are, best practices, and be able to share that knowledge and experience with others. So.
If you want to contribute to this.
Sure, yeah. I might speak a little bit about our international development policy, and we know that in crisis situations around the world, whether it's due to extreme poverty, to conflict, to climate change, women and girls are often the most negatively impacted, and very frequently they are in the worst position to respond. They're paid less, they have access to fewer resources, and also lessened access to levers of economic and political power. So we certainly see a need for accelerated action in terms of addressing gender equality through our international development policy. This, I have to say, and it's a little bit dispiriting, but you know, in some international fora at the moment, even including the term gender equality has become controversial over the last few years. There's been, as this room will be aware, there's been really concerted negative pushback on this, and certainly Ireland and I know lots of other countries have been, I suppose, in a sense, fighting a bit of a rearguard action. And again, this is we're having this conversation on the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Platform for Action, and which was a real milestone, and the Commission on the Status of Women, which meets this month every year in New York, and which I was the very proud Irish delegate to for 5 years earlier in my career, was marking and celebrating that. But at the same time, we are those of us who advocate for what we agreed 30 years ago in Beijing. We are, as I say, fighting to defend those rights that have already been elaborated. And I suppose our international development policy called A Better World, we have gender equality as one of 4 policy priority areas. So it's, for us, gender equality is front and center in our international development policy, and we take a twin track approach. We take a mainstreaming approach because we want to look at every intervention that we support with a gendered lens, but at the same time we realize we can't just make gender invisible. We also need to put resources and supports into gender-specific interventions. And so certainly our experience has been that taking those 2 mutually reinforcing approaches has been, begins the process of trying to respond to the sum of the really societal and deeply rooted issues which I suppose underlie much of why gender equality is still such a knotty issue. So that's the approach we've taken, and I think the centrality of gender equality in our international development policy is, for me, a reminder of its importance.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Gibbons. We have received a question from Eventi, from Carol Constant. What are some of the most effective actions your country has put in place recently to increase diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, thank you for this question. As I said before, some things are in place in terms of legislative framework, institutions, strategy. We have already our 5th strategy, which follows the implementation of principle of equal opportunity for both men and women. We are currently implementing a new European directive that also refers to the private sector and the obligation to report on the pay gap. So there will be better monitoring of pay gaps also in the private sector. We are working on increasing and finding this balance between private and professional life, because this is very much linked with increasing women participation on the labor market. Emily mentioned childcare, and I think it's important, and it's a subject here also in Czechia, to allow women to go back to work after maternity leave. You need to have this infrastructure in place. This is also one of our priority. I would add, because the previous question was about international cooperation, and I think it's important what Alan pointed out, that international cooperation is relevant also for exchanging best practices and lessons learned, but is also important for setting standards and not having setbacks, because too often we see women victims of discrimination, also of gender violence. We should not neglect that, because until reaching until closing the pay gap, we need to have first we need to have equality, real equality, and respect of basic human rights in the end. So I think what we try to do is to have the right policies, to invest in education. Education is key. We didn't yet had the opportunity to mention, but I think we need to go to the root causes of gender pay gap and generally of inequality. It's education, it's fighting stereotypes, it's fighting gender roles, and it's creating opportunities through public policies. Thank you.
Again, let's hope that the EU, through the Union of Skills, will help in Europe. Yeah.
If I just, and thank you for this, we have the Romanian commissioner, the new European commissioner from Romania and vice president of the commission is specifically in charge of the Union of Skills. And she's a very professional, a woman again, so we are confident that we'll make progress also as a union in this field. Thank you.
Thanks, and thanks for mentioning the fact that we need to fight the root cause, which I think is a very important thing. We are from 5 countries on stage. I was just looking, you know, and in each country we've got different cultural, I would say, attitudes towards the gender roles. how do you think that this is influencing the payback? And maybe Antoinetta, you already answered, but I don't know, Emily, Alan, who?
Well, it's a challenge in Canada because we are a country of immigrants. So, you know, our sort of basic philosophy there is that you're Canadian, but you are able to bring your beliefs and practices with you. But there's a certain, you know, point when there's also an expectation of accepting the basic Canadian value of human rights for all and equality. So I think, I mean, Antoinetta, you really nailed it. I was nodding my head away here because it's education. It's starting at the base level. And for us with a federation, our provinces are in charge of education and the curricula. So it's really for the federal government, it's about working down through the different layers of government as well to ensure that the policies are in place in those early years and at those early levels. So I know we're short of time, so I don't want to go on too long, but I think that's really, when you're working with communities from all over the world, it is a question of, you know, having those conversations early as well.
Thank you. Alan? Yep.
Yeah, maybe just, excuse me, very briefly, I suppose, again, to be maybe a little bit hopeful. I mean, certainly in Ireland, the level of third level attainment amongst the population, it's one area where women outperform men quite significantly, you know, statistically really quite significantly. And I suppose, and I know it was touched on by some of the previous speakers, it's about maybe overcoming those stereotypes and seeing women, while, you know, the raw data on, you know, degree recipients is encouraging, but then when you break it down to sectors, you see a lot of the social sectors still way overrepresented with women, and then the whether it's computer programming or ICT, underrepresented. So I think even where there is positive and encouraging stats, I think underneath it we need to really work to break down those stereotypes, those assumptions that a nurse means a woman and that a doctor means a man. We really do need to do better on breaking down those stereotypes, certainly in my society.
Thank you.
Very briefly, if I may, I think you are right. These gaps are culturally rooted, and it's about specificity of each of our countries. In Romania, perhaps the society was traditionally more, the society, let's say, is perhaps more traditional in some aspects, also regarding the gender roles, but somehow this also plays a positive factor, because the family is very important and very supportive, and I myself can testify, and many of my colleagues, that support of the family was very important in being able to pursue a career. You know, you need to see both sides of the question, and girls and boys are equally encouraged to pursue their studies, to pursue a career, and there is a lot of openness and ambition to succeed, and I think this is part of what we can be proud of.
Thank you very much, and maybe my last question, and thanks a lot for all of you who contributed to Eventi, because we have received really a lot of questions here, but I'll pick just one. We have many representatives of private companies here, so the question is, how do you see private companies and how they can, what role do they have in addressing the gender pay gap in your country? How do you see it? Emily?
Well, I think they play a huge role. I mean, you heard me say that the pay gap is bigger for private sector in my country, and part of that is around transparency. It's around the culture within the company. It's around stereotypes on what kind of jobs, you know, men and women should do. But I would just say, like, taking from my own experience, we also have 51% of our ambassadors around the world are women. We have really, really good gender equality within my department, but we didn't just get there. We set targets. We looked at the demographics. We did talent management. We had mentoring programs, coaching programs. We looked at where we needed to fill gaps when we were hiring so that we could bring people through the organization to get to these senior leadership positions. I'm pretty sure the private sector can do that as well, and I think that, you play a leadership role too, and please, get more women around the table, have the diversity of voices, get those different ideas. That is something that will make your company stronger.
Thank you.
Absolutely, and I fully agree, and I think it was said by the speakers before us, so the pay gap and generally the lack of equal opportunities, it has an impact not only on personal development, where for sure it has a huge impact, but also on, it's a society-wide problem, and it's about untapped potential, so this is where private sector is called to play also a leading role, as was mentioned before, because there are still sectors that are seen as more masculine or more feminine, and it's about organizational culture, also mentioned by, I think, a speaker, the CEO of from the ING. It's about breaking barriers and fighting discrimination, and in the end, it's also about the mindset and mentalities. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may, I think, and I would echo Emily's and Antonetta's points, and maybe to add briefly, I think measuring and data is just so important. We've seen it with the gender pay gap. When it was some amorphous, maybe it's there, maybe it's not, we're not quite sure how big it is by sector, by organization. We now, this year in Ireland, in implementation of the EU directive, enterprises with 50 and more employees will now be required annually to report on their gender pay gap. And this is critically important, because obviously if you can't measure it, you can't do anything about it. And I think we've also seen, certainly in the case of Ireland, we've seen real progress around women on commercial boards, again, in fulfillment of an EU directive. Again, when there's a target there, to pick up on Emily's point, we have a focus, we have a plan. When there isn't, I think we're all left flailing a little bit. Thanks.
Thank you very much for this inspiring discussion. A big applause for